Welcome, everyone, to another edition of White Horse Live, a co-production of White Horse Black Mountain and Rad House Studio, coming to you live from a secret location somewhere in the mountains of western North Carolina. This evening is the 16th episode of White Horse Live, hosted as always by Bob Hinkle, and tonight featuring AmiciMusic's Dr. Daniel Weiser in a program of well-known classical piano works. Thank you for helping make this a successful series. We're expanding the schedule, as you may have noticed, and we're grateful for your help in spreading the word. There is no fixed ticket price for this program. Instead, we ask that you pay what you can in support of AmiciMusic and White Horse and our artists. We'll display the tip jar address from time to time during the show, and that address is whitehorselive.tips, and we're displaying it now on the screen. We'll also show links in our social media posts and on the website. We're grateful for whatever you can pay. And if you can't, we're just glad you're here, helping us keep the music thriving. Now here's your host, Bob Hinkle.
Hey, good evening, everybody. When the song rises up, white horses fill the mountains. When the song rises up, then the clouds roll away. If you don't believe that music has some power, just stay right here with us for just about an hour. Dr. Daniel Weiser, he's gonna lift you up. He's gonna loosen up your tightening, gonna fill your cup. When the song rises up, white horses will fill the mountains. When the song rises up, then the clouds roll away. Then the clouds roll away. What's gonna happen to them clouds? They're gonna roll away. Glad you're here, everybody. Really happy to have you on a Saturday night here. Now, let me just say a word or two. It'll be very quick, don't worry. AmiciMusic, what it means is music between friends. The company has a part of its mission to bring world-class chamber music to places it doesn't usually get heard, like White Horse Black Mountain, for instance. For over 10 years now, founder and artistic director Dr. Daniel Weiser has brought us what I'm quite certain is the very best chamber music ever to be performed in a former Chevrolet dealership. Anyway, tonight's program is certainly no exception. It's called Great Piano Solos, 1725 to 1825. Good years, all of them. Featuring Dr. Weiser on piano, and he will impart us stories about these composers, sometimes compromising stories, but all interesting. Oh, and we'll hear some Bach and some Beethoven, perhaps some Mozart, and much more. I, for one, have been really looking forward to this one. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs, guppies and goldfish, please. Oh, and anybody else who's sitting on the couch. Didn't mean to forget about you. Please, a warm virtual White Horse Live applause for Dr. Daniel Weiser.
It's great to be back here. I'm Dan Weiser, the founder and artistic director of AmiciMusic. I want to thank Bob Hinkle at the White Horse and Rebecca from Rad House for being a part of this program. Some of you were with me last night when I did a program called A Woman's Voice with all great women composers, many names that are very unfamiliar and sadly neglected. Tonight I'm giving the dead old white guys a chance, and you're going to know you're going to know these names. I'm going to do some Bach, a little Haydn, a little Mozart, finishing up with Beethoven. I call the program Back to Beethoven. Really, it was Bob who wanted me to play a little Bach, which I don't do a lot of. There's not a lot of chamber music that I can do with Bach without on a piano. But I figured I'll throw in some Bach. And then this being Beethoven's 250th birthday, and unfortunately a lot of great festivals that were planning to do Beethoven celebrations could not do them this summer. So I want to make sure that Beethoven gets his due as the greatest of them all. That last piece you heard was the Prelude in C from his Well-Tempered Clavier, one of the great epic works ever written, one that all the composers sort of viewed as their Bible. And Bach was sort of viewed as the founder of the religion of music. As Schumann once said, music owes as much to Bach as religion to its founder. Schumann also said, studying Bach convinces us that we are all idiots. In many ways, Bach was just such an intellectual genius, and his music so contrapuntal and just fascinating intellectual-wise. It's also, Debussy once said, Bach is a benevolent God to whom all musicians should offer a prayer to defend themselves against mediocrity. And Roger Fry, the great English artist, said, Bach almost persuades me to be a Christian. Bach always wrote for God. He really believed that the aim and final end of all music should be none other than the glory of God and the refreshment of the soul. But he was also rather modest. He said, I worked hard. Anyone who works as hard as I did could achieve the same results. Not likely. And then my favorite quote, he once said, it's easy to play any musical instrument. All you have to do is touch the right key at the right time, and the instrument will play itself. So Bach was one of those great, great geniuses. He came from a long musical family lineage. About that last piece, there's a wonderful quote, I can't remember who said it. He said that, for Bach, C major, that key, has central importance. It is both the wellspring and the final destination. When we listen to the calm, flowing grandeur of the Prelude in C, we imagine a grand portal leading us into a magnificent Gothic cathedral, astonishing us with its simplicity and transcendence. But Bach also wrote a lot of teaching pieces, mostly for his children. He had 20 of them altogether. Many of them died young, but several of them became famous composers in the next generation. And one of those teaching types of pieces were called the Inventions. And I want to play one invention number 13 in A minor. It's been used in lots of commercials. I always hear it on car commercials for some reason. But Bach, in the preface to this invention book, he said, this is an honest method by which the amateurs of the keyboard are shown a clear way, not only to learn to play clearly in 2 parts, but to further progress, to handle 3 parts correctly, and to obtain good ideas, above all, to achieve a cantabile style in playing and a strong foretaste of how to compose music. So here's the invention in A minor, number 13. Bach's pieces are. These short pieces are just a flowing out of music, no stop, just a wonderful stream of consciousness kind of flow. But by far the greatest of his works was the Well-Tempered Clavier, which came out around the same time as the Inventions in 1723 when he was in Köthen, town in Germany. The Prince of Köthen was a Calvinist, so he was not very religious, didn't need a lot of religious music. And it is in that period from 1717 to 1723, while Bach was there, that he wrote most of his great orchestral works, like the Brandenburg Concertos, and a lot of his great piano works, the cello suites, really focusing on the instruments. And as I mentioned, the Well-Tempered Clavier had great meaning to all composers. Beethoven said, "It should be called not a stream, but a sea." Chopin took it with him on all of his trips, including down to Majorca as the only piece of music that he had with him. Schumann said, "The Well-Tempered Clavier is my personal grammar. I analyze it independently, all the fugues down to the smallest nuances. The benefit has been immense. What a moral influence it has on a person as a whole. For Bach was a human being through and through. It's as if he wrote for eternity." And Anton Rubinstein, the great Russian pianist, said, "The Well-Tempered Clavier is the gospel for any thinking musician aspiring to lofty ideals." So I want to play now the prelude and the fugue. Most of the preludes always had a fugue part to them, and Bach wrote these in all 24 possible keys, the first time that it had ever been done. And so I'm going to do the prelude and fugue in C minor. Great prelude and fugue by Bach from the Well-Tempered Clavier. And that really is the essence of the Baroque style, that counterpoint, lots of voices going at each other, very intellectual, powerful music. But Bach did also write some beautiful lyrical pieces, and I'm going to play a few movements from his Fifth French Suite, which is one of those pieces that explored a more lyrical style, and one that sort of sets up the next phase of music, the classical phase that we'll talk about with Haydn and Mozart. Now, Bach wrote these pieces because he had just gotten married in 1721 to his second wife. His poor first wife had bore him 7 children and then died. And his second wife, Anna Magdalena, would then bear him 13 more children. But she was also a singer and an amateur pianist. And for her wedding gift, Bach wrote her several of these French suites as a way to sort of get her to learn this lyrical style of playing, not so complicated as some of the inventions and the preludes and fugues. He thought it would be a better gift for her, and it's lovely, lovely music. I'm going to play the first 4 movements from French Suite number 5 in G major. Wonderful French suite in G major by Johann Sebastian Bach, our first composer on this program, Bach to Beethoven. And again, if you'd like to make a donation, pay what you can, whitehorselive.tips is the place to go. I'm Dan Weiser, founder, artistic director of AmiciMusic. If you want to find out more about AmiciMusic, that's amicimusic.org. All of our concerts and past videos are on there, and hope you can check all of those out. We want to move ahead now to the music of Franz Joseph Haydn. We call him Papa Haydn, and really the father of the classical period. That period from about 1730 to 1800 overlaps a little bit with Bach, but Bach was sort of considered kind of outmoded. He didn't write as many great melodies, so these classical people thought, and Haydn was the great master at melody. He was born in 1732, dies in 1809. His came from a very impoverished background. His father was a wheelwright, his mother was a cook, and he was sort of snatched out of the home because he had a very good voice as a young boy when he was 6 years old, and entered the choir school at St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna, the most prestigious school for choir singing. And in fact, there was a thought that maybe they would castrate him because he had such a beautiful boy's voice, but luckily the parents decided that was a bad idea. And by the time he was 16, his voice had changed so badly that, in fact, Empress Maria Theresa at one of the concerts noted him, and she said, "That boy doesn't sing, he crows." And so he was soon removed. He was also removed because he cut off the pigtail of the choir boy in front of him. So a little bit of a nasty streak in Haydn, fun streak. And he was very fortunate that he was able to hook up with the Esterházy family out in the outskirts of Hungary. And they had a wonderful home filled with music, and for 30 years or so he was the sort of the composer in residence and wrote so many pieces for the Esterházys, always busy, but it was because he was sort of removed from Vienna, removed from the heartbeat of society, that he began to develop this new style, this more tuneful style. As he once said, "There was no one near to confuse me, so I was forced to become original." And he, too, was very modest. He said, "Young people can learn from my example that something can come from nothing. What I have become is the result of my hard efforts. I listened more than I studied. Little by little, my knowledge and ability were developed." And many people looked at Haydn as the greatest. Jean Angler, the great classical painter, said, "Whoever studies music, let his daily bread be Haydn. Haydn, the great musician, the first who created everything, discovered everything, and taught everything to the rest." And we'll see that he really loved Mozart as well, and was one of the first to tell Mozart's father, "This kid has great genius." I'm going to play a piece that's not as Haydn-esque as we would expect. Haydn wrote mostly very happy pieces in major keys, but there was a time in the 1770s where he explored what was known as the Sturm und Drang movement, storm and stress. We associate that more with literature, but the music part was there as well, and a lot of these pieces were in the minor mode, filled with a little bit of emotional turmoil. So I'm going to play this sonata in E minor. It's in 3 movements. He was one of the first to come up with the sonata idea of having a fast movement, then a slow movement, and then a fast movement, all linked together by certain harmonic ideas. Nothing too long. We're going to see how Haydn's pieces all can fit within about 7 to 8 minutes. Mozart began to get longer, and then Beethoven just blew it up, and some of his pieces last for 45 minutes to an hour. But here's the shorter sonata by Haydn in E minor. Wonderful music of Franz Joseph Haydn, who we consider the father of the classical style of music. That was this music that you can hear has architecture, structure, everything put together well, as the one, Charles Burney, who wrote about music at this time period. He said, "Music is an innocent luxury, unnecessary indeed to our existence, but a great improvement and a gratification of the sense of hearing." There was not this great sense, as we're going to feel in Beethoven's music in the Romantic period, that the emotion and the soul was everything. But in that period, in the classical world, we hear the structure of the music so well. And Goethe once said, music is moving architecture, or architecture is frozen music, the corollary. And we're going to hear that especially now in the music of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who comes after Haydn, but sort of pushes Haydn's ideas even further. Mozart, of course, was one of the great child prodigies, writing music when he was 3 years old, 4 years old. The great playwright Wendy Wasserstein once said, "It's because of Mozart that it's all over by the age of 7." And there is this sense that if you don't get it done early, you're not going to make it. But this was an incredible phenomenon. Goethe said, "A phenomenon like Mozart remains an inexplicable thing." Arthur Miller, the playwright, said, "Mozart is happiness before it has gotten defined. That's a beautiful quote. Albert Einstein, the great scientist, loved Mozart's music above all. He said, "Mozart is the greatest composer of all. Beethoven created his music, but the music of Mozart is of such purity and beauty that one feels he merely found it, that he has always existed, that it has always existed as part of the inner beauty of the universe waiting to be revealed." And the great Victor Borge also once said, "In my dreams of heaven, I always see the great Mozart gathered in a huge hall in which all the composers reside, but only Mozart has his own suite." There's just this love of Mozart as he brought sunshine into music. And I want to start off with a work by Mozart that he writes in 1781. And you'll recognize the tune of this piece. It's variations on "À vous dirai-je ma main," but we know it better as "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." The origins of the tune itself was a tune that was heard in Paris at least in the 1760s, and then a poem came out in the 1770s, "À vous dirai-je ma main." The English translation is, "Ah, will I tell you, Mommy, what is tormenting me? Daddy wants me to reason like a grown-up person. Me, I say that sweets are worth more than reason." And Mozart loved the little tune that was associated with it. And there was a very famous event that happened on Christmas Eve, 1781. It was a piano duel between Mozart and Muzio Clementi, then considered probably the greatest pianist of all time, just an incredible virtuoso. And this happened at a home in Vienna set up by the Emperor Joseph II. They probably didn't know this was going to happen, Mozart and Clementi. They were just going to a party to play, and then suddenly they were fighting each other out. Each played a piece, and this was the piece that Mozart decided to play at the event. And he may have just improvised the thing on the spot. He was an incredible improviser, and then later wrote down these little tunes. But I think Mozart was enjoying the fact he could take a very simple tune and turn it into just a magical variation. So this dates from 1781. Incidentally, it was decided to be a tie, although most people thought Mozart did beat Clementi. Clementi actually wrote after the event, "Until then, I had never heard anyone play with such spirit and grace." But Mozart was not so kind to Clementi. He wrote to his father, "Clementi plays well as far as execution with the right hand goes. His greatest strength lies in his passages in thirds. Apart from that, he doesn't have a kreutzer's worth of taste or feeling. In short, he is a mere robot." And then he added later, "Clementi is a charlatan like all Italians. He marks a piece presto, but plays only allegro." So there was always a little bit of antagonism there with Mozart and Clementi, not on Clementi's part, I don't think. So let me play this wonderful variations on "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." This was written in 1781. variations on Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, written by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He did not write the actual tune, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, but he took off on it in a wonderful way, and great duel of piano against Clementi in 1781. Now, a few years later, Mozart and Haydn finally get to meet for the first time. Haydn had been hearing about this wunderkind genius who was still very young. Haydn at this time was only in his 20s, and by 1785, almost 30 years old. And Haydn and Mozart began to play together in quartets in Vienna and around that year. And Mozart actually writes his first string quartets and dedicates them to Haydn. He said, in the dedication, "A father who had decided to send his sons out into the great world thought it his duty to entrust them to the protection and guidance of a man who was very celebrated at the time and who happened, moreover, to be his best friend. In the same way, I send my 6 sons, his quartets, to you. Please receive them kindly and be to them a father, a guide, and friend. I entreat you, however, to be indulgent to those faults which may have escaped a father's partial eye, and in spite of them, to continue your generous friendship towards one who so highly appreciates it." One of the rare times that Mozart actually liked another composer. And it was Haydn who then told Leopold, the father of Wolfgang, "Before God and an honest man, I tell you that your son is the greatest composer known to me, either in person or by name. He has taste and, furthermore, the most profound knowledge of composition." And so I'm going to play just one last movement written around this time, very famous sonata in C major, just a great little piece of music. And one final quote. Of course, Mozart would die in 1791 at the age of 35. And Tom Lear, the great satirist, he said, it's a humbling thought to think that when Mozart was my age, he had been dead for 5 years. So accomplished so much in such a short time. Here is the first movement of the sonata in C major by Mozart. It's now time to get to the great Ludwig van Beethoven, who really single-handedly brought music, kicking and screaming, into the next century, into the Romantic period, as we call it, a time when really music rose to the highest of all the art forms. Before then, as I mentioned, music was thought about as an innocent luxury, something that we could use or couldn't use, and really literature and painting were considered a much higher art form. But in the Romantic period, where it was all about the emotion and the soul, music really became the focal point. And as Walter Pater once said, all arts aspire towards the condition of music. And all the poets wrote about it. Lord Byron, the great English poet, he said, the greatest object in life is sensation, to feel that we exist even though in pain. John Keats said, let me have music dying, and I seek no more delight. Ludwig Tieck, a German romantic poet, said, without music, earth is like a barren, incomplete house with the dwellers missing. And Wackenroder, another German romantic poet, said, music is the art of arts, for it is able to detach the sentiment of the human soul from the chaos of earthly existence. And the man who really sort of helped bring this about, Beethoven, was born in 1770 in Bonn, Germany. His father also wanted him to be like little Mozart, knew he was a great child prodigy. Unfortunately, Beethoven's father was an alcoholic and beat Beethoven as a young boy. And ultimately, Beethoven escapes and tries to go to Vienna to study with Mozart. Unfortunately for Beethoven, by the time he gets to Vienna, Mozart has already died, and he ends up studying with Franz Joseph Haydn, but they do not get along well. Actually, before he studies with Haydn, he tries a guy named Albrechtsberger, who we've sort of forgotten as a composer. And Albrechtsberger said, a very funny comedy, said, this young Beethoven never has learned anything and never will learn anything. As a composer, he is completely hopeless. Famous last words. But Haydn and Beethoven did not quite get along. Haydn liked music with a little more charm and a little taste. And Beethoven was very much into finding the soul and finding fate in music. And he was not the nicest guy. He started teaching lessons in Beethoven, and he once told one of his, in Vienna, he told one of his piano students, you will have to practice long and faithfully before you realize that you cannot play the piano. And he also is the man responsible for sort of making our modern piano instrument. Up until this time, pianos were much smaller. They would fall apart easily. And Beethoven was known as a destroyer of all pianos because he played with such power. Instead of playing just from the fingers as Mozart would, he used his whole body. It was a full-body experience when you watched Beethoven. And there really was a graveyard of pianos after he would finish concerts. We have a wonderful description by Anton Reicha, who was asked to turn pages at one of Beethoven's concerts. He said, during the night, I was mostly occupied in wrenching the strings of the piano which had snapped, while the hammers stuck among the broken strings. Beethoven insisted on finishing the concerto. So back and forth I leaped, jerking out a string, disentangling a hammer, turning a page. I think I worked harder than Beethoven. But because of him, people like Broadwood in London, the piano maker, helped develop pianos that could withstand the force that Beethoven was putting into it. Now, Beethoven also had a lot of confidence in his abilities as a performer. And one of the best quotes he had was the following. He said, music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy. It is the wine which inspires one to new generative processes. And I am Bacchus, who presses out this glorious wine for mankind and makes them spiritually drunk. He lived for a while in Vienna with a prince, Prince Lichnowsky, who was a generous guy and recognized the genius of Beethoven, and in fact told his servants, if we both ring at the same time, go to Beethoven first. He is more important. But Lichnowsky wanted Beethoven to play piano at some of his parties that we'd have, and Beethoven would do that on occasion. But there was one famous time when there were soldiers coming, and Beethoven did not want to be playing, and he ran off. And Lichnowsky wrote him a nasty letter saying, I really thought you were going to be there to play some music. And Beethoven's response is kind of immortalized. He said, dear Prince Lichnowsky, what you are by accident of birth. What I am by myself. There are and will be 1,000 princes. There is only one Beethoven. And he was right about that. But around this time, in 1798, a bad thing happens to Beethoven. We all know he begins to go deaf. And he is ashamed of telling anybody that because he knows that he's the greatest of them all. And how could he possibly go deaf? And so he writes this amazing piece, the Pathetique Sonata. I'm going to play the first and second movement of that around this period, which is really sort of this cry about his deafness. Here's a letter that he wrote to a doctor, a friend of his, around this period. He said, you desire to know something of my position now. Well, it is by no means bad. However incredible it may appear, I must tell you that Lichnowsky has been, and still is, my warmest friend. Slight dissensions have occurred between us, yet they only serve to strengthen our friendship. And he actually dedicates this piece to him. He settled on me last year the sum of 600 florins, for which I am to draw on him till I procure some suitable situation. My compositions are very profitable, and I may say that I have almost more commissions than it is possible for me to execute. I can have 6 or 7 publishers or more for every piece if I choose. They no longer bargain with me. I demand, and they pay. So you see, this is a very good thing. But that malicious demon, bad health, has been a stumbling block in my path. My hearing during the last 3 years has become gradually worse. My ears are buzzing and ringing perpetually, day and night. I can say with truth that my life is wretched. For nearly 2 years now, I have avoided all society because I find it impossible to say to people, I am deaf. In any other profession, this might be more tolerable, but in mine, such a condition is truly frightful. Besides, what would my enemies say to this? And they are not few in number. So I'm going to play now this incredible, the first movement, which cries out. It has this beginning very slow, and normally in classical music, the first movement is that fast part. But in Beethoven's Mathétique, he starts with a slow introduction. That is really this cry. Then we get the fight, the rage. But that introduction keeps coming back. And it's just a phenomenal, tense movement. And then the second movement is that spiritual movement when Beethoven, at his worst, is still able to summon the courage to see God, to see something about love and mankind. This was the theme song to Karl Haas, if you remember his radio show. So here's the first 2 movements of the Pathétique Sonata by Beethoven. one of the most glorious slow movements in all music. After just that cry in the first movement, to be able to come up with that shows just the incredible genius of Beethoven. It's a wonderful quote by E.T.A. Hoffmann, if I can find it amongst my stuff here. Here it is. Great German writer, also a composer and an artist. And he said, Haydn's music reminds us of a blissful, eternally youthful life before the fall, while Beethoven's music sets in motion the lever of fear, of awe, of horror, of suffering, and awakens just that infinite longing which is the essence of Romanticism. And again, I'm going to play one last piece. Again, Whitehorse Live .tips. If you're able to send a donation in to support this wonderful series at the Whitehorse. I wanted to read a letter that Beethoven wrote but never sent, right around the time that he writes to this next piece, the Moonlight Sonata. I'll play the first and last movement of that incredible piece. It's called the Heiligenstadt Testament. It was supposedly written to his brothers as he was contemplating killing himself, and it was going to be his sort of last will. But in it, he describes the horrors, again, of being deaf at the time. He says the following: "For the last 6 years, I have been afflicted with an incurable complaint, which has been made worse by incompetent doctors. From year to year, my hopes of being cured have gradually been shattered, and finally I have been forced to accept the prospect of a permanent infirmity, the curing of which may perhaps take years or may even prove to be impossible. Though endowed with a passionate and lively temperament, and even fond of the distractions offered by society, I was soon obliged to seclude myself and live in solitude. If at times I decided just to ignore my infirmity, alas, how cruelly was I then driven back by the intensified sad experience of my poor hearing. Yet I could not bring myself to say to people, 'Speak up, shout, for I am deaf.' Alas, how could I possibly refer to the impairing of a sense which in me possessed in the greatest perfection, even which in me should be more perfectly developed than in other people, a sense which at one time I possessed in the greatest perfection, even to a degree of perfection such as assuredly few in my possession possess or have ever possessed. I cannot do it, so forgive me if you see me withdrawing from your company. Moreover, my misfortune pains me doubly, inasmuch as it leads to my being misjudged. For me, there can be no relaxation in human society, no refined conversations, no mutual confidences. I must live alone and may creep into society only as often as sheer necessity demands. I must live like an outcast. If I appear in company, I am overcome by a burning anxiety, a fear that I am running the risk of letting people notice my condition. How humiliated I have felt if somebody standing beside me heard the sound of a flute in the distance, and I heard nothing. Or if somebody heard a shepherd sing, and again, I heard nothing. Such experiences almost made me despair, and I was on the point of putting an end to my life. The only thing that held me back was my art. For indeed, it seemed to me impossible to leave this world before I had produced all the works that I felt the urge to compose. And thus I have dragged on this miserable existence, this truly miserable existence." Written in 1802, a year after he writes his sonata in C-sharp minor, known now as the Moonlight Sonata, but Beethoven didn't name that. It was named by a critic, Ludwig Rellstab, after Beethoven had died. And what's fascinating about this piece is that the most famous part of this piece is the first movement, which I will play. But this is not the part that Beethoven thought was good. For him, the first movement was just a prelude, and he was trying to throw off the usual order of a sonata, in which the first movement is the most important, and then the third movement is kind of the throw-off. But in this piece, he wanted the first movement to just sort of be a meditation waiting for the explosion. That would be the third movement. But the third movement is crazy hard, so a lot of people don't play it. I'm going to be stupid enough to try it here, but the first movement is beautiful, and many people have noticed it. Berlioz said, "It is one of those poems that human language does not know how to qualify." Carl Czerny said, "It was a nocturnal scene in which a mournful, ghostly voice sounds from the distance." even during Beethoven's life, this was a piece that everybody loved to play. And Beethoven was so exasperated by that, he once said to a friend, "Surely I have written better things than that." But it is such a gorgeous movement. But again, it is that last movement that is this explosion. It is so visceral. And again, it is right at the time he's at that point maybe thinking about suicide. Charles Rosen, the great writer, said, "It is the most unbridled in its representation of emotion. Even today, 200 years later, its ferocity is astonishing." And it really still is. And one last quote I always love to say about Beethoven, it comes from Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. He said, in the book, somebody says, "You know, a person feels good listening to Rossini, but all you feel like after listening to Beethoven is going out and invading Poland." So you do sort of feel like that after the third movement. I hope you enjoy it. It's been fun to be here. Thanks to Bob and Roundhouse Studios. And enjoy the first movement and then the last movement of the Moonlight Sonata. very violent and powerful last movement of the Moonlight Sonata. It's been a great pleasure to be with you for the last 2 nights here at the White Horse. If you want to find out more about AmiciMusic, that's my organization, AmiciMusic.org is our website. You can find some past videos and other concerts, live streams that we are doing from Baltimore, where I live. And I look forward to being back here at the White Horse, hopefully in the fall, to do more live streams. Thank you again to Bob Hinkle for having this fantastic space, and now in collaboration with Rad House Studios here. They got a great thing going. Hope you watch more. And again, whitehorselive.tips for donations. Thanks again. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Daniel. That is much appreciated. That was quite a program, I've got to tell you. I had been looking forward to it for a long time, and I'm happy to have heard it. So let's move on from the fabulous and the ornate and the wonderful to the knee slap. What do you say? When the song rises up, white horses will fill the mountains. When the song rises up, then the clouds roll away. Well, Dr. Daniel Weiser, he was the vessel here this time. I hope that you enjoyed it, maybe had a glass of wine or two. I hope that you were able to let go of yourself. I hope that we helped you take your joy down off the shelf. When the song rises up, white horses will fill the mountains. When the song rises up, then the clouds roll away. When the song rises up, then in the mountains, the song rises up. Then the clouds gonna blow away. Then the clouds gonna roll away. Then the clouds gonna roll away. Now, as usual, we've got one more piece of business here. Very important. White Horse Live's Between the Cushions worldwide contest is ongoing. We want to know what treasures you have found between the cushions of your couch, since many of you had been sitting on them for 4 months anyway. Have a look, find the most interesting thing, and drop us a line. Tell us what you came up with. We can be found at Between the Cushions, White Horse, Black Mountain, P.O. Box 456, Black Mountain, North Carolina, 28711. A winner will be announced on White Horse Live every week, and a grand prize will be awarded after a while, as soon as we figure out what it is. So let us hear from you and your couch. This week's winner is that ever so strict disciplinarian orchestra conductor, Leonard Prickstein. In between the pillows of his couch, Leonard found a copy of that rarely performed opera, Trump Cavorts, subtitled March of the Sugar Plum Nazis. Apparently, just as Daniel said about Thomas Pynchon's book, some people, after hearing this, do have a sudden urge to invade Poland. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We'll see you next Friday, July the 31st at 8 p.m. when White Horse Live presents the first family of Celtic rock and folk and Americana, Tuatha Dea. Then on Saturday, August the 1st, we'll hear from guitar royalty Robin Bullock. He's coming back premiering material from his new CD, An American Guitar Album. So stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and remember, even if you haven't showered in weeks, social distancing can keep you in the game. Good night now.
Thanks for joining us for White Horse Live with tonight's musical guest, Dr. Daniel Weiser. This program is produced by White Horse Black Mountain and by Rad House Studio. Bob Hinkle is your host and executive producer. Claire Hoke is audio engineer. Jessica Wharton is director of photography and roving camera operator. Michael Stevens is network engineer. Jessica Fox is key grip. Public relations services provided by Maggie Rainwater at Hoosier Devil. I'm Rebecca Hillgraves, director, producer, and camera operator. Join us on Friday, July 31st at 8 p.m. for Tuatha Dea, right here on White Horse Live, and Saturday, August 1st for Robin Bullock. In the meantime, be good to each other, and that includes all people.